Every great empire tells itself a story of permanence, of stone and steel, of legacy and law. They build monuments to their own eternity. But beneath the marble and the gold, a clock is ticking. It doesn't count the years, but the promises. It doesn't measure victories, but value. This is the story of how the mightiest powers on earth don't fall to invading armies, but to a simple, devastating process. A disease of the treasury that starts as a whisper and ends in ruin. It is the story of financial collapse, and it has a script. A predictable 7-act tragedy that is played out time and time again, from the cobbled streets of Rome to the financial capitals of the modern world. And the most unsettling part? The story always begins in a golden age. How does a nation go from the world's creditor to its biggest debtor? From a beacon of stability to a cautionary tale. It is not a sudden event. It is a quiet, creeping decay. A journey through 7 distinct stages. A roadmap to ruin that is eerily consistent across centuries and cultures. This isn't just about economics. It's about psychology, power, and the fatal temptation to solve today's problems with tomorrow's prosperity. Can we see this pattern in our own time? Is history repeating itself, not as farce, but as a silent financial ledger where the debts are finally coming due? The question is not whether empires fall, but how. And the answer is written not in the history of war, but in the history of money. Our story begins, as all these stories do, with strength. This is the first stage, an era of sound money and fiscal discipline. Picture the early Roman Republic, a society built on substance, not illusion. Its currency, the denarius, was a coin of nearly pure silver. It was heavy in the hand. It felt real. Because it was. Its value wasn't a government decree, it was intrinsic, derived from the metal itself. This coin was a symbol of a deeper Roman ethos. Prudence. Responsibility. A balanced budget was not an economic policy, it was a moral virtue. The state spent what it earned. It expanded through conquest, but those conquests paid for themselves in plunder and tribute. The roads, the aqueducts, the legions, they were built on a foundation of tangible wealth. The government's promise was as solid as the silver in its coins. This financial integrity fostered a powerful sense of trust. A citizen could save for the future, confident that the fruits of their labor would not evaporate into thin air. A merchant could trade across vast distances, certain of the value he would receive. This trust was the invisible mortar holding the entire structure together. It was the bedrock of Roman power. But power is an appetite that grows with feeding. And this leads to the second stage, the slow creep of overexpansion. No one votes for this. There is no single moment of decision. It is 1,000 small choices, each one seeming logical at the time. A new war on a distant frontier to secure a border, a grand new coliseum to placate the public, a growing bureaucracy to manage an ever larger territory. Each new expense adds another stone to a pack the empire must carry. The ambition of the state begins to outstrip its income. The military becomes a permanent, professional force stationed across continents, a colossal, ever-present drain on the treasury. The promise of public works becomes an entitlement. The costs are no longer temporary investments, but permanent obligations. Yet the prosperity feels endless. The victories are celebrated, the monuments are unveiled, and the economy hums along. The initial disease is asymptomatic. The public sees the glory, not the growing mountain of IOUs in the state's ledgers. Leaders discover a dangerous truth. You can spend money you do not have, at least for a while. The discipline of the early republic gives way to the imperial appetites of a global power. The balanced budget becomes a relic of a simpler time. The first whispers of a dangerous idea emerge, that the state's needs are more important than the integrity of its money. The foundation, once made of solid rock, now has fine, almost invisible cracks spreading through it. The cracks begin to widen. The costs of the empire, its endless wars, its sprawling bureaucracy, its bread and circuses, are now relentless. The treasury is bleeding. The emperor faces a terrible choice: raise taxes significantly and risk revolt, or cut spending and appear weak. Both are political suicide, so they turn to a third option, a hidden path. This is stage 3, the age of debasement. It is the government's original sin. It begins subtly. An order is given to the mint. Take the silver denarius and mix in a little copper. Just a fraction. The coin looks the same. It feels mostly the same. But it is a lie. The state can now mint more coins from the same amount of silver, paying its soldiers and its bills with diluted money. At first, it's a brilliant solution, a magic trick. The budget is balanced, and the public is none the wiser. But the trick becomes an addiction. Emperor Nero is one of the first to truly exploit it. He reduces the silver content by 10%, then 15%. Later emperors, facing greater crises, become even more brazen. Under Caracalla, the denarius is less than 50% silver. By the mid-3rd century, it is a piece of bronze with a thin, deceptive silver wash. The coin is a ghost of its former self. This is not just a financial policy. It is a profound act of theft. The government is secretly stealing the wealth of its own people, siphoning value from every coin in circulation. It is a hidden tax that no one voted for. And it has an inevitable consequence. This brings us to stage 4, chronic inflation. The secret is out. Not because of a whistleblower, but because of the market. The baker, the butcher, the farmer, they are not fools. They notice that the new coins are lighter, that they tarnish differently. They understand, instinctively, that they are being given less. So they demand more coins for their loaf of bread, their cut of meat, their bushel of wheat. Prices begin to rise. Slowly at first, then with terrifying speed. A soldier's salary, once enough to support a family, now barely buys a week's worth of grain. Life savings, painstakingly accumulated over a generation, evaporate. The value of labor is destroyed. The future becomes uncertain. People are punished for saving and rewarded for speculating. The economic order is turned upside down. The government's reaction is not to fix the money, but to blame the merchants. They accuse them of greed and speculation. In 301 AD, Emperor Diocletian makes a final, desperate move. He issues the edict on maximum prices. This law fixes the price of over 1,000 goods and services, from wheat to haircuts. The penalty for violating it? Death. It is a shocking attempt to bend reality to the emperor's will, and it is a catastrophic failure. Farmers refuse to sell their crops at a loss, so they either hoard them or consume them. Goods disappear from the official market and reappear on the black market at even higher prices. Shortages become rampant. The economy, once a vibrant network of voluntary exchange, grinds to a halt. The government, in its attempt to solve a problem of its own making, has broken the very engine of prosperity. The trust that held society together is not just damaged, it is shattered. The system is now running on fumes. The official currency is a joke, the laws are ignored, and the economy is a wreck. This is where the empire enters the 5th stage, the loss of faith. This is the true point of no return. It is a psychological event, not an economic one. The people, from the senator to the shopkeeper, collectively give up on the system. They no longer believe in the government's promises. They no longer believe in its money. their behavior changes radically. Saving becomes pointless, so they spend their worthless coins as fast as they can on anything tangible. Hoarding becomes the only rational financial strategy. People don't want coins. They want land, tools, jewelry, salt, anything with real, enduring value. Barter replaces commerce. The economy regresses, becoming local and primitive. A farmer trades wheat for wine. A blacksmith trades a plow for livestock. The great interconnected marketplace of the empire disintegrates into a million isolated transactions. The wealthy do not stick around to watch their fortunes dissolve. They engage in capital flight. They smuggle their gold and silver out of the empire, buying estates in distant, safer lands. They bribe officials. They use covert networks. Anything to get their real assets beyond the state's desperate grasp. This exodus of capital is the economic equivalent of a massive hemorrhage. The empire's lifeblood is draining away, and there is nothing the state can do to stop it. With the economic foundation gone, the social structure collapses. This is stage 6, the fall of the middle class and the breakdown of society. The middle class, the artisans, the merchants. The successful farmers are the bedrock of any civilization. They are the savers, the investors, the innovators. But their wealth was held in the currency and the financial instruments of the empire. And that wealth has been utterly destroyed by debasement and inflation. They are wiped out, annihilated. Society splits into two extremes: a tiny, ultra-wealthy elite who held their wealth in hard assets, and a vast, impoverished population utterly dependent on the state for survival. The social mobility that once defined the Roman dream is gone. The space between rich and poor becomes an unbridgeable chasm. With the middle ground gone, the social contract is torn to shreds. Desperation leads to unrest. Crime skyrockets. Cities become dangerous. People abandon them for the relative safety of the countryside, seeking protection from local warlords and powerful landowners. The loyalty of the people is no longer to the abstract idea of the empire, but to the strong man who can guarantee their next meal and their physical safety. The empire is no longer a unified state. It is a fractured landscape of fear and feudalism. It has rotted from the inside out. The final barbarian invasions were not the cause of Rome's fall. They were merely the scavengers picking over a corpse that had already died. And so, we arrive at the final, fatal stage. Stage 7. The rejection of the currency and the end of an era. The empire's money, once the standard for the known world, is now worthless. Foreign merchants refuse it. Tribute states reject it. The empire can no longer pay for its imports or its mercenaries with money it creates from nothing. Its economic power on the world stage is gone. Its geopolitical influence evaporates. It has lost what we today call reserve currency status. This is the checkmate. The game is over. It's a chilling story from a distant past. But is it just a story, or is it a mirror? Look at the world today. For over 70 years, the US dollar has been the world's reserve currency, the foundation of global trade. This has given America an incredible advantage, what has been called an exorbitant privilege. We can buy goods from around the world with money we can create at will. We can fund our vast military and our social programs by issuing debt that the rest of the world is eager to buy. We have been living through our own golden age, built on a foundation of global trust in our currency and our promises. But look closer at the stages. The overexpansion. A military presence in over 80 countries. A national debt that has grown exponentially, a figure so vast it has become an abstraction. The debasement. It no longer happens by clipping coins. Today, it's called quantitative easing. Central banks create trillions of dollars out of thin air to stimulate the economy and fund government deficits. The money looks the same in our digital bank accounts, but its supply has exploded. And the consequence? Inflation. We are all feeling it. At the gas pump, in the grocery store. The value of our savings, our wages, is being silently eroded. We see the price controls not as edicts on pain of death, but in calls for windfall taxes and regulations on price gouging, attempts to treat the symptoms, not the disease. We see the loss of faith, the rise of alternative assets, from cryptocurrencies to real estate, as people desperately search for a store of value that the government cannot dilute. We see the hollowing out of the middle class, the widening gap between the asset-rich and the wage-earning poor. The social fabric feels more frayed than it has in generations. The parallels are not exact, but the pattern is unmistakable. The sequence is the same. The question we must ask is not whether this can happen to us. The question is, where are we in the 7 stages? And how much time is left on the clock? The story of fallen empires is often told as a morality play of decadence and decay. But the financial collapse is something more fundamental. It is a story of mathematics. A government, any government, cannot spend more than it produces indefinitely. A currency, any currency, cannot be infinitely diluted without becoming worthless. These are not political opinions. They are laws of economic gravity. The great illusion of every empire is the belief that it can defy these laws, that its power, its prestige, its sheer indispensability will allow it to bend the rules of reality. The temptation is always the same: to print the money. It is the easy answer. It quiets dissent, funds ambitions, and postpones the day of reckoning. It is a silent, painless tax in the beginning, and a devastating cancer in the end. Empires are not murdered. They commit suicide. They choose the slow poison of currency debasement over the hard medicine of fiscal responsibility. They sacrifice the long-term health of their nation for the short-term political gain. The cycle repeats because human nature is constant. The pressures on leaders are relentless, and the lure of the printing press is the most powerful political narcotic ever invented. History does not offer us a simple escape from this cycle, but it does offer a warning. It shows us the map. It marks the stages. The choice, ultimately, is whether to read it. To recognize that the path of endless spending and endless money creation, a path walked by Rome, by Spain, by Britain, and so many others, has only one destination. The final choice is never between prosperity and austerity. It is between a managed, difficult correction and an unmanaged, catastrophic collapse.